friend Nolan Kane coaching from the other side of the dugout for the first time, which is going to be interesting for him. That's going to lead us into this conversation with Coach. You know, this is opening weekend of SEC is always special, right? We had you opening day of the season here,
right?
And that's a special situation. That's a special weekend, but opening weekend of SEC is something even better than that, right? You've had 3-4 series to kind of figure out what's going on, kind of figure out who can play, who can't play, who's going to step in, who's not going to step in, kind of set the rotation, set the starting lineup, maybe a couple tweaks here and there. What is your mindset as a head coach, coaching especially for LSU, going into SEC play, having 17, 18 games under your belt?
Well, you two guys know this, and I don't have to tell you this, but as a coach and as a player, you come to LSU to play in the SEC. You don't come to play against Maine.
Right.
You don't come here to play against Bethune-Cookman. You come here because you want to line up against the best players in the country that didn't go to LSU and against the best teams in the country not named LSU. You want to challenge yourself, and you want to see whether or not you have what it takes. And this is where you find it out. This is big boy baseball in college baseball. It's the big leagues of college baseball. And I say that, Mikey, because the worst team in the SEC is like the worst team in the big leagues. They're still going to win a third of their games. The worst team in the SEC is going to win 10 out of 30. Yeah. The worst team in the big league is going to win 60 out of 160,
they got to beat
right?
somebody.
Yeah. Exactly. And they're filled with, the worst team in the big leagues is filled with major league caliber players, and the worst team in the SEC is filled with SEC caliber players. I remember when we won it all in 2009, the only series we lost that whole year was to Tennessee. They were the last place team in the SEC, but they had 3 future big leaguers on that team.
Right.
So what you're starting in SEC play is 30 games that are as intense as college baseball can be. You're going to face outstanding pitching. You're going to face great hitters if you're a pitcher. You're not going to outcoach the other coach. Every venue is an exciting venue, and it's a time to separate the men from the boys. If you've got it, you're going to show it in the SEC.
Every Friday night guy in the SEC is going to have a potential to make it to the big leagues. So every Friday night, you're going to go and you're going to face against a major league caliber arm. You're going to have 1 or 2 guys in your lineup that are major league caliber players. And no matter how good or bad that you think or perceive the team is, or how the analysts or the experts say, oh, this team is not that good, and LSU should beat them, or whatever, Vanderbilt should beat them, whoever it is,
right?
There's always that chance, and I think that's what makes baseball so special. Does your message to the team change going into the SEC play? Like, I know how you talk to us, and I know how those conversations went, but if, I don't think, obviously, people listening and watching, they don't know. Like, does that message change the way you talk to your players?
Well, you know how I was. Every day at practice and every non-conference game, we tried to treat it the same. I put pressure on you guys in practice. I put pressure on you in the non-conference games, all for the purpose of preparing you for SEC competition and postseason competition. And I used to tell you guys, look, you don't have to try any harder today because you're playing Texas for the national championship. You don't have to try any harder than you did 30 games ago, against Ole Miss, or 40 games ago in non-conference play. I put pressure on you just to prepare you for SEC play and for postseason play. Now, I don't know how every coach does it, Mikey, right. But if you try to distinguish between the games, now guys do things unnatural and they put extra pressure on themselves. You can't play the game of baseball tight. You got to play it loose and confident and go out there and let it rip. That's what I've always believed, and I hope that was the way that people perceived our teams to be through the years, that the bigger the game, the better we played because we were more confident, more loose than everybody else.
Now, so what used to be known as, I guess, SEC bias I think only, my personal opinion is, I think only through the years it's turned from an SEC bias to you're seeing preseason, throughout the season, 5+ SEC teams in the top 10 or better.
Yeah.
Do you think the competition, even though it's always been strong, we've known that, do you think the competition in the league has gotten even better as the years have gone?
It's always been awesome.
Right.
You know, I mean, every year that I was there for 15 years, the SEC was the best conference in college baseball. But I think the thing that's changed, even since you guys played in 09 and then 10 and 11, is the quality of the arms has continued to ratchet up depth-wise.
Right.
It used to be like on Friday night you were going to face 94 to 97.
Right.
And then Saturday night you would face 91 to 93. And then Sunday you'd find the pitchability guy that was 88 to 91. Now, on Saturday and Sunday, you're facing another guy that's throwing 95 to 97 miles an hour. The depth of the quality of pitching on the better teams in the SEC is really outstanding now. As far as position player-wise, I don't think the players are any better now than they were. Like when our team in 09, I had people tell me that our starting 9 in 2009 was the best crop of position players that they had seen in 20 years in college baseball. It's hard for me to say that they're better now. In fact, in some ways, I don't think they're quite as good. You know, we had a blend of speed with power, with guys that could handle the bat. LeMahieu could hit the ball the other way, you know, at any moment. Mikie could hit the ball out of the park. Blake Dean could hit the ball out of the park. You stole 40 or 50 bases every year. We could hit and run. You know, the diversity of our team, you know, just the ability to do so many different things, I think is what made us so tough.
Right.
So we could win a 2-1 game if we had to ride Renato or Coleman or our bullpen, or we could win an 11-10 game because we offensively could create that. If we fell behind, we had power to get back in the game. If we had a lead, we could do things on the bases to bury the other team. So I don't know if the position players today across the border is good, but the arms are better.
No doubt. I agree. I think the lineup, LSU's lineup this year has the potential to be one of those elite lineups, one of those lineups that are talked about, you know, in the future. And these are the guys that you've been able to be around and coach. And I think the big surprise, and I think the question mark going into the season for this team was, how deep is the staff going to be? Who's going to step up? And I think they've done a good job. I think that's been a surprise of how consistent. I know we talked a little bit about Blake Money and how, you know, you had a conversation with him before you left and saying, hey, you know, and he came up to you after the fact and said thank you. And kind of lit a fire under his ass a little bit and said, hey, you know what? I need to make these changes. And now he looks like an elite Friday night guy. And thankfully, he's not super injured. And I don't think he's going to pitch tonight, but I think he is going to throw this weekend at some point. I think it was only a wrist injury. What do you see in this lineup that makes them special? And I saw that Gio, who you recruited and brought to LSU, has the last 3 games gotten into the lineup and kind of solidified the right field position and kind of solidified the bottom part of that order and kind of took him to another level.
So, Mikey, my evaluation of the team is probably a lot different than the layperson out there because I worked with these kids day in and day out. First of all, I am not surprised at all about the high caliber of the pitching. I knew that we had good arms. Last year, you know, we had kids that were freshmen that we, you know, ran out there. And when you're a freshman pitcher, it's hard. You know, there aren't many Alex Langs that are going to step in as freshmen and go 12-0. But I saw Blake Money's potential, and I saw, you know, Garrett Edwards and Will Helmers and you know, all those other guys. And then we recruited some good kids as well. You know, the Paul Gervais, the tall kid, you know, we got him from a junior college. And I saw the potential there and you know, Grant Taylor and all the other guys that we brought in. So I'm not surprised at all by the caliber of the pitching for LSU right now. Not at all. And I think it's going to continue to be really good. I think people were underrating it by a wide margin.
They're deep. They're deep.
And they're
in
super
arms.
deep. Okay.
Super deep.
And you know, the manager, the head coach makes a decision on who they want to stick with. You know, when Anthony Renato became our number one starter in 09, he had only thrown 10 innings the year before as a freshman. But you have to bite the bullet and say, okay, who do you want to believe in? And I believed in Anthony, and Anthony went on to an All-American season and led us to a national championship with the way he performed on the mound. So who Jay is going to count on and depend on, not just for, you know, an inning here, an inning there out of the bullpen, but somebody that he could, like maybe Ty Floyd is that guy, you know?
He looks great.
Hey, listen, Ty Floyd turned down a lot of money coming out of high school to come to LSU, and last year I thought he showed glimpses of being an extremely high caliber pitcher. I thought he needed to, you know, be able to spin the ball a little bit more to be able to pitch, you know, extended outings, because when you go through the lineup 2-3 times, it's hard to do it just on one pitch. But he's got a swing and miss fastball. I mean, it's a four-seamer.
You can tell.
For one inning, he can do nothing but throw 15 fastballs. He's going to strike out the side, I can tell you, okay? So there's arms there. To be honest with you, the lineup concerns me more than the arms do. It's got a chance to be elite, like you say, Mikey, but there's a lot of swing and miss in there, and they're going to hit home runs if the wind's not galing in or they're not facing a guy throwing 96 miles an hour. But you know, in the SEC, you're going to face those guys. I don't know if they'll face them this weekend against Texas A&M. Texas A&M has not probably got their strongest team they've had. But when they run up against Vanderbilt's arms or Florida's arms or Tennessee's arms or whatever, are they going to be able to hit consistently those guys, or is there going to be too many strikeouts? Remember, they struck out 14 times against Louisiana Tech that one night. So they have a capability of being really good or struggling as well. They don't do a lot of base stealing, and they don't do a lot of hit and run type of stuff. So that concerns me. Is the offense going to be consistent? You know what I mean? Giovanni brings some speed to the lineup, but he also brings some swing and miss. The other kid that he's replacing, you know, at third base, Merrifield, I was excited about Jack when we recruited him because I thought it was a guy that could handle the bat and hit the ball to the opposite field.
And he's done that. He's had some big hits.
So, you know, the question again is up to the manager. Does he want to play the guy with outstanding speed that can do some electric things, but he's going to swing and miss quite a bit? Or does he want to play the more steady guy that can handle the bat, not going to strike out so much?
In your eyes, since it's been such a highlighted part of this season so far, and I personally don't think it's something that'll continue into the year, how important is defense, being able to play good defense in the thick of an SEC season? How important is that to the success of the team?
So that's another concern about the lineup, Jared. But, you know, Kim Mulkey and I were talking about this not too long ago. I don't care whether you're talking football, basketball, or baseball. To win in the SEC, you have to play defense. I know, you know, in football we won the national championship, and maybe our defense wasn't great that year, but you're talking about
there were still guys, there were still some absolute dudes on that.
And you know what happens, Jared, when it's an offensive atmosphere, defense is relative, you know. Your defense only has to be good enough to hold them down a certain amount, you know, because of an elite offense, you know, like we had when Joe Burrow was here. But I don't care what the sport is. If you don't play defense, it's hard to win championships. And that's the thing that was the most underrated thing about our team in 09 was how great our defense was. We played outstanding defense, and you know,
the Tennessee game, you made a dip change
especially towards the back end of the season.
Just for defense. Literally, just for defense.
Well, following the Tennessee weekend is when we put Austin Nolan at short, moved DJ to second, moved Ryan to left, moved Jared from left to right, moved you from right to center field. I'm not saying we upgraded center field by taking Leon out and putting you out there.
Leon's coming too. Leon's showing up. So hey, I'm gonna tell Leon, hey, coach said I was an upgrade center field from you. I'm gonna tell him that. I'm gonna tell him I was an upgrade.
I will say we upgraded right field, but we upgraded our infield defense. I thought Austin Nola was a difference maker defensively. A couple years later, I thought Andrew Stevenson was a difference maker defensively, and so I played him as a freshman in 2013 in center field when he hit 180 but if the ball stayed in the ballpark, he caught it.
Right.
And that was the caliber of center field play that we were used to having at LSU. And I just think in order to win championships, you got to play defense. Now, with that said, I think the way that LSU played defense in the early part of the season was an aberration.
I agree with that.
I think we're better than that. You know, if you look at, you know, the majority of my time here, Mikey, I place such emphasis on defense that in the SEC, when you looked at the fielding percentages, we were always one of the top 3 teams. It was generally us, Florida, and Vanderbilt were the 3 best defensive teams because I put that kind of emphasis in it. Now, again, the new head coach, he has to decide, you know, do you want the extra bat or do you want to have the guy that maybe is not a great hitter but a really premier defensive player at a key defensive position. And those are decisions.
Derek County, that was
That's a good call.
There you go.
Those are the decisions those are the decisions that you have to make as the head coach.
So, and a lot of people going back to like early part of the season, a lot of people were concerned and worried about, oh, they went to Houston and they struggled in Houston against better competition and all. But leading up to SEC play, those sometimes going through those bumps and bruises, sometimes going through those situations against teams and against in a different ballpark that you're not used to playing is a better learning experience than winning those 3 games. And what do you put a ton of stock in that, or do you say, hey, look, boys, this is the competition that we have to go up against every week, and this is what we failed at. Now we need to work and get better. Use that as motivation.
Well, you know, Mikey, when I first became the coach here, Skip Bertman actually talked with me about that very topic. And he said to me, quote unquote, don't be afraid to lose a game early in the season to find out who are the guys you can count on. I tried to win every game, believe me. When we were lining up and we were playing, whoever I put out there, I expected them to perform at a level that would allow us to win the game that night. But you can't look at a crystal ball and just predict what's going to happen. So you got to let some guys play to be able to find out how they handle the bright lights, how they handle the better competition. Sometimes they have to fail a little bit. Hey, listen, sometimes guys failed and I stuck with them because they showed something to me that I believe that they would come around. Other kids, you know, when they failed, you realize that, hey, if we're going to want to go to Omaha and win the national championship, we've probably got to be stronger in this one area. So I wouldn't worry about losing games. You know, the RPI will take care of itself once you start playing SEC games. And, you know, there's plenty of non-conference games in the middle of the week to get your record, you know, at a high level. So I think going to play in Houston, even though they lost 2 out of 3, probably helped their team grow.
Yeah.
It's funny you bring that up because I think a lost art in the sport right now and in coaching with so much analytics and stuff going in it is that people lose the idea of being able to judge the difference between performance in fall ball, performance in midweek, performance in pre-conference, and performance in conference play. You know, being able to see how people act and their reactions to good and bad stuff in those situations, I thought was one of your biggest strengths as a coach, was being able to put the people out there that needed to be out there in those situations because of what you were able to see with the eye, as opposed to what you were able to see on a piece of paper.
I appreciate that, Jared, because, you know, it was how I was raised. I mean, I know you didn't like
There's
it
some more
that
playing
much
time for
when I
you
was
over
putting you
there.
through it sometimes. You know, because I needed to challenge guys to see how they could handle the pressure. And it was the way I was raised by my father as a coach, that given equal ability, the player that could get the job done with the pressure on him the greatest in the clutch situations, those were the guys that you were going to win with. Now, you know, professional baseball is different. You know, they're going to give guys in the minor leagues 400 at-bats, and numbers are going to determine those things. But when you have to win a game today, and in college we only play 56 games, we only play 30 in conference play. who's going to get the job done today? When that runner's out there in scoring position and there's 2 outs and you're up to bat, can you rise up and get that big hit?
Right.
And God knows I'm sitting between 2 guys that got a lot of the hits when it mattered the most for us, the big hits, And that's how we won. When we're losing by 2 runs to Texas in Game 1 of the College World Series, and they bring in their left-handed closer to face Jared Mitchell with 2 guys on base, and he smokes one in the opposite field gap to tie the ball game. I'm the
Great triple. You look great running around the bases.
I'm the least surprised guy in the ballpark because I've seen you do that. I've seen you do it for 3 years. I've seen you grow into that kind of player. When Mikie Mahtook steps up and gets the game-winning hit in the 11th or 12th inning, whatever it was, after he was having a rough night, I was not surprised because I knew what he was made of. I knew he had that extra ingredient that you can't measure with statistics. That competitive zeal, that self-confidence, that guy that can rise up and do it when he needs to do it the most. And this is what I did my whole career, Jared and Mikey. I tried to select players that could handle those situations. And as a coach, if you select the right players, you get to have a long career. If you select the wrong players, they put you out on the curb.
And that's the thing is people want to judge coaching and players on wins and losses, and sometimes it's not up to you. Like you can only put the player in that position. You can take a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. This kind of thing. You can put the right guys in the right situations and surround the guys, but it's up to the players on the field to take it upon themselves. Say, you know what, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna make myself work hard enough and put myself in a position to where I am gonna come through in those situations.
Hey, Mikey, I coached for 39 years. I never threw one pitch. I never batted one time. I never ran the bases or caught one ball in the field. My success as a coach was determined by the efforts of the players that we put out there on the field. So my job was to recruit them, to coach them, to build their confidence, to find out which ones could handle the pressure. And then there was some game strategy involved as well. But the profession that I was in was solely, my success or failure was solely going to be determined by the efforts of a bunch of 18 to 22-year-old kids. It's a unique profession, but it's what I loved. Yeah. I loved molding a team. I used to always say that when we started fall practice, it was like I was handed a big pile of clay, and now it was my job to mold it into something beautiful.
Right.
And it wasn't me. I took the criticism once in a while, a little bit of the praise, but I wanted the players to get the praise, and I wanted to take the blame when it didn't work out. Yeah. I just had to pick the right kids, and fortunately through the years I picked enough of the right ones. We had so many great players that we had enough success that I could stick around for 15 years.
And I guess if you swing it back to this year's team, that's why I asked the question I asked earlier, because I know from playing so much baseball, from being around baseball for so much, playing in this league, you have to play good defense, right? There could be that one play that gives you the opportunity to still be able to be a run down or a run ahead, to where the next inning at the plate it matters in the right way. There's that one play that doesn't get made defensively that could end up being deflating for a team.
For an example, and this didn't come back to haunt us, thankfully, but in the game 1 of the Super Regional, we're playing Rice at home. I'm sitting in the outfield there's 1 out, and they hit me a fly ball. One out. They hit me a fly ball. I clink it. I just lost focus. I dropped the fly ball. We get the next guy out. The next guy comes up. Runners on first and second is Anthony Rendon. He hits a 3-run home run off the scoreboard. Luckily, we were up by 6, so it didn't really matter. But I gave them an extra out. They took advantage of it. Their best hitter hits a 3-run home run. Instead of being in the inning with a 6-run lead with some cushion, I give up a 3-run home run.
Let's use another example in a positive way. Okay, the year before you came, Mikey, in 2008, Jared Mitchell's playing left field. We're playing Cal Irvine in the Super Regional. It's the last game's ever going to be played in the old box. We get beat the first night, which ended our 23-game winning streak. The next night, now it's do or die. We're down 6-1 in the 7th inning.
I remember. I'm driving home from Monroe, listening to the game on the radio.
Jared led the 8th inning off with a home run to get us closer. I think we got another one.
That's my guy.
They had that.
No, Jared.
Oh,
This guy.
Oh, white Jared.
They had a really good left-handed pitcher, Bilboa, remember? And he was carving us up. Jared hits a home run, gets us closer. Well, anyway, we had the phenomenal rally, and we were the visiting team on the board. We have a phenomenal rally in the 9th inning to take the lead. The box has never been louder ever, right? So we take the lead 9-7, and we go to the bottom of the 9th inning. And Coleman's on the mound, and he's kind of on fumes now. He's getting pretty tired. And he goes 3-0 to the first batter, throws a strike, 3-1. On the 3-1 pitch, a left-handed hitter smokes one to left field, and the ball's carrying. And Jared goes back and makes a diving catch face first into the wall in left field.
Right.
Unbelievable play.
Right.
Now, if he doesn't make that catch, it's at least the double. The next batter does double. All right, so that would have put runners, or scored one and put the tying run at second. They probably would have sacrificed, bunted him to third base. The guy would have probably come home on a sacrifice fly, and God knows if we're going to play extra innings or they're going to walk us off and end our season right there. But because he makes that play,
they don't have that opportunity.
The next guy doubled, and then we get 2 pop-ups, and we win the game. And the next night we beat him 21-7 and hit 7 home runs and close up the old box in the most appropriate way and go to Omaha. And that trip to Omaha laid the groundwork for us winning the championship the next year.
And to touch on that, just to go back through like that 23-game winning streak, I can remember, like we were great during that span offensively, but I can remember when we would be on offense and we're hitting, a lot of that was due to the entire dugout was we waited for that one walk.
Yep.
That one defensive mess up where we're like, maybe we might be down in the game, and no one ever felt, because once that happened, we knew
the door's open.
There it is, the door's open.
Yeah.
So I can remember how much we were basically feeding off of bad defense or bad
the other teams.
You know what I mean? So like that, it's huge.
And like you said, I think that the beginning of this season was a little bit of an aberration. I don't think that's how they are, because Jordan Thompson played great. I think he's a good shortstop. 100%. I think he plays great play. I think it was just one of those things. They fell into a couple of, baseball is such a mental, emotional game that sometimes you get in those. I mean, 2010 we went through that 7-game losing streak, and that was just like no matter what we did, what we tried to do, we couldn't get out of it. Like it was. Sometimes you go through it, but you have to get out of it. The other side of it is once you go through that and you get better, you're better for it later on.
Although you could have gone the whole night without bringing that up and reminding me.
That was right in the middle of that, Coach. Hey, I had
off at Ole Miss like 3 times.
3 times in a row, basically.
In one weekend.
We had a players-only meeting against Florida on the Sunday game in Florida, and I get up there, Renato's talking, everybody's talking. Anthony's here. He probably remembers this. The players-only meeting in Florida when we were losing in the middle of that 7-game losing streak in 2010. So we're going there, we're talking. Yeah, right. Oh. So I get up there, right, and so we had this like emotional meeting, and so we go up to the Sunday game, and they had their starter, who's ended up becoming the SC pitcher through nothing but coverage. I forget his name. I'm leading off the game.
Paul Mainieri.
First pitch of the game, home run. I'm like, I run around, I'm getting fired up. We lose the game 8-1.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we think that we're turning the corner and that happens, and then we get out of it. Anthony gets back healthy, and we make this deep run.
We won the SEC
and we ended up winning
tournament.
the SEC tournament. So those moments make you better towards the end of the year, right? And I think, I appreciate you for being here. I know it's been keeping you probably longer than you want.
It's good to be with you guys.
I do. Get in here.
Take a seat.
This is the time. Right. This is the time.
I'm in.
So, were you going to come in and relieve me?
We sent them before you because you're the biggest.
You're a much better starting pitcher than
usually. We know that. Yeah, I'm not a reliever. Yeah.
But I want to touch on this. I think a lot of people when they think about coaching, they think about the X's and O's, and they think about lineup changes and picking your starting lineup and pitching change and all of these things, right? Which, yes, that all goes into it. But I think what made you special, and I think what makes a lot of the elite coaches and managers special is they understand how to communicate and how to see how the team is molded personality-wise, and how close the team is or how not close the team is. And I guess talk to us about how important it is to understand the personality of your team and to be able to connect and be able to make decisions, not necessarily based off what you see on the field, but based off of what you see, how I guess the chemistry between the guys.
Well, it's a hard question to answer in just a few minutes, Mikey, but I'll tell you a little story. After we won the championship in 2009, I had come here from Notre Dame, and the administrator that oversaw football in 2009 at Notre Dame, I'm talking about, used to be the baseball administrator when I was there at Notre Dame. So he and I were very close, and a couple weeks had gone by after the championship, and he called me up one day on the telephone, and he said, this guy is now the athletic director at Marquette University. His name's Bill Scholl, and he said, I want to tell you a story. Besides, congratulations on the championship, but I want to tell you a story. He said, I was sitting in my office watching the championship game, and one of the football coaches for Notre Dame walked by and stuck his head in and said, Bill, what do you watch? And he goes, I'm watching LSU play for the national championship. The coach used to be our coach here. And so he came in and sat down. Well, before you knew it, there were like 5 coaches for the football team at Notre Dame sitting in his office watching us play and win the national championship. Anyway, this fellow, when he was talking to me on the phone, he said that one of the coaches said to Bill, why is it, I've been watching Paul's teams for years here at Notre Dame and at LSU. He said, why is it that his teams always play so well, so composed, so confident, so loose in the biggest games of the year when other teams get tight and don't play as well as their ability allows them to play? So he said, I need to ask you that question because I'm going to report back to this football coach. So I thought about it for a second, and I said, well, first of all, thank you for the flattering comment. But I said, Bill, the only thing I can think of, the reason is because every player that you saw out there playing for us for the championship, every one of them earned their position. I didn't hand anything to anybody. I don't care how elite they were coming out of high school or how elite their talent was, I made every one of them earn their job. So if you know that you had to earn your job and you're on a really good team and you're playing for the national championship, that must tell you something about yourself that, hey, I must be pretty good.
Right.
And so they played with poise and composure and confidence because they knew they were good enough to do it. And I guess, I don't know if I'm answering your question, Mikey, but it's not just one thing, it's a building of a team. It's a building of a player, of an athlete, where you see something that you like in him, that you believe he can be a winning ball player, and then you mix in challenging him with a lot of encouragement and a lot of confidence in him, and you love him up. Like I remember when Jared was a freshman, my first year here, and he had struck out in the 9th inning with runner in scoring position late in the game, and we had lost the game. And after the game, the reporters were all waiting to meet with me, and I had Jared, I don't know if you remember this, I had Jared come and sit next to me in the dugout. And even though, people out there, all the reporters were waiting out on the field to talk to me, they didn't know what I was saying to him. But I was saying to him that, look, I don't care how talented you are physically and the skills that you have. If you can't do it in clutch situations, you're never going to go anywhere in this game. And I challenged him. He didn't like hearing that, okay? He didn't like hearing that. But then he's the guy that hits the triple against Texas with 2 guys that tie the game. Somewhere along the line, somewhere along the line, he crossed that bridge where he knew how to get him, like Michael Jordan used to talk about how he'd get in the zone, and he'd want to take the last shot of the game. Somewhere along the line, all of you learned how to put yourself in that mindset where you were focused and intense, but you weren't pressing. You were able to relax yourself and be confident so that you could handle that situation. And that's what I tried to do as a coach, and hopefully I was successful most of the time with you guys to do those kinds of things. Now, when you try to, you get this guy, and then you get this guy, and then this is how you build it, and then you try to So, hey, listen, sometimes I used to do things that make all of you mad at me so that it would be a unifying thing among you guys.
Seen that a couple times.
I was actually about to say that. I was like, not every player is built the same, right? You had to figure out what's going to resonate with them. For me, it was you had to be hard on me and you had to challenge me to become who you wanted me to be. You had to kick me out of the cage in 4-man ball for doing nothing and commenting on something. You had to challenge me and tell me that the pitcher's pitching better than me, or if he's not better than you, then you're just not good enough.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
and you had to challenge me that way. Some guys you needed something else, but I think that's what made you so good is you were able to pick and choose, and you knew what to say and how to approach that challenge of that player.
I'll add this in it too, because I think this is important to understand, is that it wasn't just the 9 out on the field that felt that they earned it, is that he was able to get that message and that feeling across the entire bench as well. So there was no players pitting against each other, basically. The guys that were on the field felt like they earned it. The guys that were in the dugout were cheering for those guys, and they felt like they earned it, and everyone was pulling on the same side of the road. That's very hard to do, and he was able to do things like that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Jared, and I know Anthony knows this because I've done podcasts with him before, but I've said this many times. I don't think we win the national championship in 2009 without Buzzy Heidel and Chris McGee,
Wait, time out. It's not
Ryan Bird, and Nolan Kane.
We definitely don't. We 100% don't.
Not a question.
It's not even a question.
So you know, when Buzzy and Chris were starting players in my first year here, and we didn't have a very good team that first year, okay? And they were starting players, and they were good ball players. You know, I mean, obviously they were good ball players, but they weren't the caliber of player that we could line up every day with and then win the national championship. And so at the end of the year, I knew we were recruiting a really good class. You know, that was Anthony's class coming in the next year. It was the #1 recruiting class in the country. And I knew that Chris McGee and Buzzy Heidel's roles were going to change. Nick Pontiff's role was going to change.
Right.
You know, Ryan Bird and Nolan Kane's roles were going to change. And I sat them down and told them that they could be very important individually. I would talk to them and tell them, you're going to be a very important part of the team, but it may not be in the capacity that you're used to or that you want.
Right.
But if you have the right attitude, you can affect the team in a positive way. If you can't have the right attitude, then you're better off not being a part of the team, and you're better off going somewhere else.
Right.
So what I tried to do was just be very honest with guys, whether it was what they wanted to hear or not, and let them accept their role. And hey, everybody wanted to play, but I can still remember. You remember in 2008 when we went to Kentucky? Matt Clark was leading the country in home runs. You weren't on the team yet, Mikey.
I was watching though. I was watching.
We were going to face.
You remember this?
We were going to face 3 major league future major leaguers, 2 lefties. Remember?
Paxton
And Rustin.
Yeah.
And we got rained out on Friday night. And the next day, it was beautiful, sunshiny day, but the wind was blowing straight in from right field. I mean, the flag was as stiff as a board, blowing straight in, and we were facing these 2 tough left-handers. And I went to Matt Clark, and I said, Matt, you're not going to be in there today. And he almost blew a gasket, you know?
Yeah.
What do you mean? I said, Matt, you're struggling against lefties. You're not a good defensive player for me to play you for defense, okay?
Really honest.
Not good.
That's what he does.
Yeah.
Jacob Berry, are you
And I said, speed is going to matter, so I'm going to put Chris McGee in.
Let's go.
As the DH today. And McGee went like 4 for 6 in the doubleheader, stole 2 bases, scored the winning run in extra innings, and then the next day Clark was back in there and he hits a home run in the 9th inning to win the game for
Probably the
us.
best pin job I've ever seen, too. Like,
It's so funny you bring him up today because we've mentioned him on the show before, but we talk about Chris and we're like, Chris is one of them dudes in that 2009 year where it was every time he got in the game, whether it was to steal a base, whatever it was, he was making impact in the game. Like, it was never not that. We just knew it. Like, hey, Chris is playing today too.
And how about Buzzy? Remember when Ochinko pulled his hamstring before the Auburn series?
Wait,
that hamstring
pulled
that was
his
better in 3
hamstring.
days.
You said that.
It miraculously healed. I don't know how that happened.
I think Buzzy going 6 for 8 in 3 games probably had something to do with it.
hey, Buzzy was nice at first base, too. He had some pitch. No, he was nice at first base, too. Sean was sweating.
Sean was nice.
While he pitched.
Sean had that extension. For the extension.
There you go.
Yeah.
But you asked me and you're safe flattering things to me, but it's the kids, they have to have the right attitude, and when you get it right, like you've got really a great team on the field, you've got outstanding pitchers with a deep enough staff, and then you've got reserve guys that are great team guys that love LSU, that are all in. It's magic,
right?
I mean, you wish you could have that every year that same way. It doesn't always work as perfectly as it does some years, but I always tell young coaches, I just did a clinic up in Illinois for high school coaches in the state of Illinois. It was freezing. I was up there, it was like 4 degrees, a month ago.
Not at all.
Yeah,
and obviously the clinic was indoors. But and I told these coaches, I said, you need to spend more time talking to the players that are not regulars, that are not everyday players for you, to make them understand their role, to keep them vested in the team, because when you call on them, they got to be ready, but you want them to be good teammates so that you have a great atmosphere, and it's just something I always tried to do.
I know we talked a little bit about Notre Dame. This is a little sidebar. For an update, I know it's a game of interest. They are winning 41-36 against Alabama at halftime.
I think all LSU fans are probably Notre Dame fans right now. Anything against Alabama, right?
Get Alabama out of there. LSU plays at 6:30 or 6.
Yes.
So that's going to be a game of interest. Iowa State.
Big sports show.
Big sports show. You had a question, I think you had a little earlier.
I mean, he kind of answered a little bit, but I was going to know how, because of the way they should treat you more differently, you have to feel the gauge and temperature of what player is getting his ass, or, hold on, this might be a little bit soft.
Yeah.
How did you
Well, it's not much. He doesn't really sugarcoat things if you're
No, what do I believe?
It's not necessarily soft. Some kids perform better when they know you believe in them, and like I believed in all the players. When I put you on the field, that was a sign that I believed in you. Okay, but you take like a guy like DJ LeMahieu, for example. When DJ was in his freshman year, which is my second year here. One day, I guess I was going on a particular rant in the dugout, and DJ said something to Mike Hollander, and Mike Hollander was a tremendous leader and one of my favorite kids I've ever coached. And Mike Hollander always had enough courage to come and talk to me privately, and he would be as frank with me as I was with him. And this one particular day, he said, "Hey, Coach, I think you're getting on DJ LeMahieu's back too much. He's starting to think you don't like him and you don't believe in him or whatever." And it was good that Mike shared that with me. So in LeMahieu's case, look, nobody practiced harder than him. He never took a day off day, and there's LeMahieu in the cages, right? This guy knew he wanted to be a big league ball player, and he was going to work like crazy. He had a great work ethic. He performed in the clutch. He did the little things. There was no reason for me to be getting on him every day. So I backed off with DJ, and I would put my arm around him more frequently, and that type of thing. And he performed great. Now you take a guy like Alex Bregman, who these guys didn't play with. Bregman used to come to me and say, "I need you to get on me more. I need you to jab me with a stick."
And they're both equally as talented.
But he wanted me to be on him because it kept him focused and intense. And even now, he motivates himself whenever he has to play with a chip on his shoulder for him to play good. He doesn't want praise.
And Michael Jordan, he took that personally.
So like when he was playing shortstop for us, it was the year after Austin Nola graduated. He'd make a good play, and I'd say, when he'd come to the dugout, I'd say, "Hey, Alex, that was a nice play, but I've seen Nola do better." And it used to make him so mad that he would go out and take 50 more ground balls. balls at practice, because he wanted, I'd say, or, play he didn't make, I'd say, I think Nola would have made that play. So, after the game, he'd go out and take more ground balls because that's how he wanted to be driven. It was hard for me to find fault in him, but I had to for his benefit.
You probably don't remember this because you've done this a lot, but you used to do that. We were playing Arkansas and Drew Smiley was on the mound. It was a Sunday game. It was a 1 o'clock game, overcast. And one of those just dreary, you always kind of come out a little sluggish. And I had a situation in my first at bat, runners on first and second and third with 2 outs. He elevated a fastball, struck me out. And it's just kind of one of those things, I wasn't upset, I wasn't happy, but I just kind of put my bat down, and you just didn't see that fire in me, and so you got in my ear, and you said, hey, did you go out last night or something? And I was like, no, I was sleeping by midnight. Are you lying to me? I was like, no. He goes, oh, so he's just better than me.
There was no correct answer.
I'm like, what? And he's like, what? He looks like he's better than you. And so then I get mad and I walk down the dugout, and you follow me down the dugout in my ear because you're trying to, you're riling me up and you're trying to get me. And I'm like, coach, you need to stop. Get away from me. And you just kept doing it. The next situation, 2 outs, runners on second, third, 1-2 pitch to the same exact pitch. I hit a home run right center field. I run around, I throw my helmet into the bat rack, and I'm not even happy. I was like, I told you he's not better than me. And you're just smiling, you knew exactly what you were doing. It's that's what you do. You knew what I needed to hear and what I needed to do. And he knew the backstory. I threw my helmet, I shattered Gruey's glasses, 2010. Shattered his glasses, and Gruey's mad at me, and I'm walking down, going through the mosh pit of teammates, and Mainieri's just laughing at me. Coach is just smiling, I did what I was trying to do. That's exactly.
There's a handful of times I think he got into me to the point to where I was I think he knew when he would get to me when I would just either give him a very, very short answer or just not say anything and walk away. And I think when I would walk away, my back would be trying to think, he'd be like, I'm on.
He knew. That's what I was trying to do.
You guys are making everybody that's watching this podcast think that I was the meanest guy in the world.
That's what we needed to hear.
No, this is incredible. I didn't even know it. I was there in the dugout. I didn't even know.
That's what we needed to hear.
Well, my job was to get the best out of you for our team's sake, but also for your development's sake, so that you could take your careers as far as they could go. Sometimes you have to do it at risk, that you might be putting our relationship on the line. But I always thought that the true winners, someday, maybe not that day, maybe not even that year, maybe not even while you were playing for me, would understand why I did that. And now here you are at 30 years old or so, and it sounds like you understood why I did it.
I knew it after the fact. I was when you're doing it, I'm like, why is he doing this to me?
I used to love showing him up. Hey, I used to love in my mind. I was like, he's on me right now. Oh, I can't wait. I'm just gonna look at him. Just stare at him.
And he wanted that.
He wanted it. Playing just to look at coach. That's what you
I didn't care about anything else that was going on. I'm getting this hit because I can't wait to stare at him.
I remember once when Anthony started against Auburn in a midweek game in a mid-year game in 2009, and the first 6 pitches he threw were about that high.
I remember that.
And I went out to the mound after 6 pitches, and I ran out to the mound, and I said, "What the hell's wrong with you?" And he looked at me and he goes, "I can't feel the ball in my hand." And I said, "Well, damn it, start feeling the ball with your hand."
From up there.
6 pitches into the game.
6 pitches. Figure it out.
Anthony, what's going on?
How many strikeouts you have that night?
15.
I think he found it.
Hey, Blue.
Feel for this thing.
Blue. New ball.
That was it. He was like, let's get a new ball. Problem solved. No, that was what you did to me. I felt like it was little demeaning things or passive aggressive, and I was like, was that a little jab, And I'm like, oh no, he thinks twice, and I'm like, oh, he was. All right, let's go.
Yeah, it's that fight or flight mentality, and he knew the guys that he needed to make fight. And I think that goes back to circling back to what I asked. I think that is the answer to the question. Is you knew how to.
He's like a dad.
Yeah, he knew like okay, I need to do this.
But please tell me there were times when I went to you and put my arm around you and said, I know you can get this guy.
100%. Those were just less memorable. These were the memorable.
These are the ones that serve better for entertainment.
They knew you loved
Texas.
them. Yeah.
Game 1 against Texas when I got the hit. There's a picture of me and you and Leon. Leon's here somewhere. He just walked in. I saw him. But you had your arm around us, and you had literally because you were hard on me because I was struggling. Mm-hmm. And then I got the hit, and you put your arm around me, and you basically were explaining to me why you did that to me to put me in that situation, and we ended up becoming successful because of it. So you're hard on him, but then you're also love hard too. And that I think is a great combination.
He's like a dad. That's what I said. Tough love, but at the end of the day, you know that you're my guy.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a little secret. So one of my mentors, as you guys know, is the great Tommy Lasorda, Hall of Fame manager for the Los Angeles Dodgers. And I spent a lot of time with Tommy in my formative years as a coach, okay? And we had a lot of long talks about managing people and how to handle players and so forth. And I'll never forget, he told me this one day. He said, managing a team is like holding a dove in your hands. If you squeeze it too tight, you kill it. If you hold it too loose, it flies away. So just finding a feel to have just enough firmness that you could control it, but not so tight that that you squeeze the life out of the players.
That's how you stay married, Coach.
And what I try, honestly, what I would do is, try to get you ready to play. But I think I tried to be my best with you was after failure. Right. To let you still know that I believed in you. Like after the game was over and we lost. That was when I tried to be as positive as I could with you, because I didn't want you to get down on yourselves. You don't gain anything as a coach by beating your players down. Right. You sometimes have to beat them a little bit just to get their attention, but all I ever really wanted to do was build you up to make you believe that you could do anything you put your mind to it. So,
did you ever have any? I was thinking about this earlier when Mikey was like coming in the dugout. I was like, we're all pretty hot-headed, but we're all level. Have a level of normalcy to us. Right. Over 30 years of coaching, have you ran into anybody that was crazy and maybe tried to kick things too? What I was thinking is how did you command the recipients not to get hit or somebody push you or do something like that? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
In the heat of the moment?
No, I would never let it go that
far. No, I know, but I'm saying, but a dude that's crazy, might not even just have that.
Well, again, Anthony, I think you guys are remembering those moments when I challenged you.
Right.
But think about everything leading up to that moment.
True. That's where the balance was, right?
What was our relationship like leading, that had, over the course of time until that moment.
Right.
I think you knew I believed in you, and I think you knew that I loved you, and I wanted what was best for you. So I knew that I could challenge you in those specific moments because you knew I was in your corner.
Right.
I agree.
Coach, I love you.
Mikey,
I appreciate you. I appreciate you doing this. And you gave us a nice 45 minutes.
Wait, before you let him go, I'm sorry, I know we kept you a long time, but we had Chad Jones on, what?
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Wednesday. Wow, say Friday. Wow, I missed my show, I don't remember.
Yeah, big sports show. But he was saying the comparative between a football championship team on the Sheridan on in the baseball team and how baseball and football never really hung out, but that team always had a mutual respect. I was just wondering how you could tell that Jared Mitchell and Chad Jones and the guys that you had on the baseball team, this is a championship locker room.
After Chad and Jared had won the national championship in football, I used to have them talk to the team in the huddle. And I would ask them, tell the players what it's like to go to sleep one night and know you're going to wake up the next day and play for a national championship, because that's what these guys all want to do. And Jared and Chad are the only two players in the history of college athletics to win a national championship in both baseball and football.
In college athletics?
I know.
Really?
Well, and the football,
between the
baseball
guys,
players,
yeah. Crazy, huh?
They're the only two. They're the only two.
Take that, Jim Thorne.
Yeah.
So I used to tell the guys on the team that when they wear their national championship ring, you guys should kneel in front of them and kiss them until you get your own. But remember when I used to tell them this all the time, that you can't believe what it's going to be like when you go to bed at night and the next day you're going to wake up knowing you're going to wake up and play for a national championship. Well, of course, the final series is best 2 out of 3. So we have this amazing game, the greatest game I've ever been involved in, when we beat Texas in Game 1, when Jared hit the 2-run triple, and then LeMahieu hit the 2-run double to tie the game in the 9th, and Mikie wins the game in the 11th, and Matty Odd had shut him out for 3. It was the greatest game ever, okay? And in brutal conditions, it was so hot. We had guys getting IVs in between innings, and it was just the most courageous, toughest team you ever saw in your life. And we win the game, and we all, we're celebrating, and we go meet in right field like we would after the game, and Buzzy's in the huddle, and he's like jumping up and down, and he's like, we're going to go to bed, and we're going to wake up and play for a national championship. Remember that? Yeah. Well, first, we had beat Arkansas to win the bracket, and he did it in the huddle. And I said, because we made it to the finals, and Buzzy's jumping up and down saying, we're going to go to bed and wake up and play for that. I said, Buzzy, it's best 2 out of 3. We're not going to win 2 games in one night, okay? And he's like, oh, you're right. Well, then after we won, he did it again. I said, yeah, now we're going to know what it feels like.
Yeah.
Oh man! And then we ended up losing, and then we really did wake up the third game and say, "Hey,
two nights to sleep."
That's what he said. He said, I remember you telling us before we went to sleep. You said, "Hey, if I told y'all at the beginning of the season that we would go to sleep and we would wake up and win, we were in the last game of the season, last possible game of college baseball season, we would be playing, and you have a chance to win a national championship. Would you take that? Would you be excited?" And we said, yeah. He goes, well, that's what the situation is. Screw this loss. This means nothing. Yep. And we went to sleep, and we woke up, and we beat the crap out of him.
Well, Anthony remembers that because he told me this privately not too long ago, because we had just gotten beat by Texas, and the guy shut us down pretty good, that pitcher that night. And so we thought we were going to win the national championship that day, and it didn't happen. And guys were hanging their heads a little bit, and I grouped everybody up right down the third base line there, and I told them, hey, if I'd have told you back in August that we were going to play 1 game for the national championship and Anthony Renato was going to be our pitcher, would you have taken that deal? And all you guys started nodding, of course, and we went out and did it. But Anthony told me that gave him such a feeling of responsibility for the next night and confidence that he could do it. And of course, he led us to your 3-run homer and your game-winning hit in the 6th inning had a little to do with it too. But it was a great team effort by everybody.
Yeah, it was all.
Yeah, it was so well timed too.
No, it was perfectly
mic drop.
I remember that game. That game ended. We lost. We had that conversation after the bus ride back to the hotel. And by the time we got to the hotel,
you would have thought we won.
It was the loosest group of dudes. Everyone was having fun. It was almost like we had a day off going into the national championship.
That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted. I said, look, we're not going to walk off this field with our heads hanging. I want you to go get on that bus, play the music. Let's go back to the hotel. Loosey-goosey. Get a good night's sleep, and tomorrow we're going to beat their ass for the national championship. And that's what we did.
That's what we did.
And there's nothing more intimidating if you're on the other side. You've seen a team get off the bus. It's like, oh, they look like they're confident for no reason. Like, we just beat their ass. Like, they don't know that. They're coming off fresh.
You know what I remember about that time in Omaha? We were there for 2 weeks, and we played 6 games, the 3 days in a row against Texas, but we had played 3 games over like 10 days, before that. We had practices in between, and our practices were great. Yeah. Like, guys were so loose, but
except for when DJ got hit in the head.
Yeah, well, that wasn't so good. Yeah. But, it was just like that 2 weeks just flew by for me. We just played so great.
It didn't feel like it was 2 weeks. Now, for the fans and all the family, I'm sure it felt like it was a
felt
month.
like forever.
Yeah, right.
But for us, it felt like it was like it didn't feel that long.
And it was weird too. It wasn't like we were we weren't doing anything crazy, but it almost kind of felt like baseball was almost like on the side. Like we were like, oh, all right, let's go lock in for a couple hours and we'll come back and just
hang out with friends.
Yeah, we'll just enjoy the place we're in.
No doubt.
It was crazy.
That's when you know you're good. Yeah. For sure. So you know.
I remember talking to guys that were in that same College World Series, and they were like, literally everything was scheduled to a T. We were like, dude, we're just kind of having some fun with it.
What do you have to do? Oh no, we went to the zoo and like we did this. Like we had practice.
First night, like we got in town, I felt like I knew the town because we were there last year.
Yeah.
Over here, and I was like, what am I doing? But it was great. It was chill.
Way different.
Wait, you didn't see Chad Jones at BP?
Chad making a standing ovation in batting practice.
Yeah,
we told that story. It was a special moment.
And there's the great Leon.
And there he is. There's Leon, baby, he's here. Coach, I told you, I promised you I'd get you after the second half. I lied to you a little bit. It's 14 minutes left in the second half. That's a good score, though.
The Irish are whipping the
they're
group.
whipping Alabama's butt.
Any bets on that?
I have some bets. We'll talk about it. I don't want to talk gambling with Coach on here. Can't get him caught up in it. I don't want him to judge me.
No.
Coach, I love you. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for being out.
Always great to be with you guys.
You know, anytime you want to come on, anytime you want to be here, I love you. So thank you.
Thank you, Mikey.
We're gonna take a little break, get Leon on here, get Coach out of here,
Yeah.
give her hugs and kisses goodbye, and we'll be right back.